She stepped into the grand marble lobby just as the rain began to tap against the towering glass walls. Her uniform was simple, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes carried the weight of every long shift she had worked. He walked. In seconds later, phone pressed to his ear, voice low but urgent. He barely noticed her at first. Another face in the sleek, polished corridor of his empire's headquarters. But something in her stance made him pause. The billionaire was known for moving too fast, trusting too few, and fearing no risk. Today he had a meeting that could reshape markets, seal a deal worth hundreds of millions. His schedule was impenetrable, every second accounted for, every path cleared. He strode purposefully toward the elevator, the door sliding open almost at his approach. She stood silently just outside, mop leaning against the wall. Her shift had ended 40 minutes ago, but when she saw him enter, she felt a tug she could not ignore. She set aside her mop and approached, voice firm despite the flutter of nerves. "You should reconsider," she said quietly. "The elevator is stuck." He glanced at her as if she were mistaken. This building was his domain. Elevators could not fail him. He lifted an eyebrow and turned back to the doors, tapping the button again. The door did not budge. He frowned. A technician had assured him that every system was tested, that nothing could go wrong. Yet here he was, staring at closed steel. He stepped back, head tilted, as she repeated herself. "You should go to the stairwell instead. Something is wrong." Her warning came not from protocol but from instinct born of years of cleaning floors and watching tiny signs others missed. A faint hum, the way the cables vibrated, a whisper of tension. He inhaled, frustration rising, then curiosity. He glanced at the security cameras, motion sensors along the shaft. No alerts. But then he noticed the technician's nameplate near the elevator bank, scratched, mismatched wiring drawn in chalk. He walked closer, inspected the panel. A loose bolt, cables frayed. It would take hours to repair. Stairs would be faster, he muttered. He followed her to the fire exit, imposing his height through the narrow door. The corridor beyond was dim, emergency lights flickering 60 seconds at a time. She led him down flight after flight, her steps quick despite her worn shoes. His polished loafers clicked hollowly beside her steady rhythm. As they reached the ground floor, sirens blared overhead. He stopped, alarmed. His world was precise, predictable. Sirens were for others. He turned to her, voice tight. "What's happening?" A tremor of fear shook her shoulders. She pointed to the street outside. Smoke curled from beneath a delivery truck parked at the curb. Flames licked the undercarriage. The brakes had overheated, igniting the tires. No one was near enough to notice until seconds ago. He jogged forward. Hundreds of people streamed from the revolving doors behind them, oblivious until alarms painted urgency onto their faces. They hesitated at the wide glass doors. They didn't know where to go, nerves fraying. He grabbed the handle, swung it wide, and guided them out. She stood back as he ushered executives, interns, visitors past the heat and smoke. Firefighters arrived within minutes. Hydrants were opened, hoses uncoiled. The blaze dimmed to nostalgia. A small crowd gathered, snapping phones. The building remained intact, thanks to a sprinkler system he had insisted on decades ago, an expense many thought unnecessary. Today it proved life-saving. He returned inside to find her standing by the stairwell door. He felt a pull of gratitude and something else he had not felt in years, humility. He offered to call a cab to take her home. She smiled politely but shook her head. She lived nearby. He pressed a bill into her palm nonetheless, more than a fare. She looked down at the money, conflicted. "Just my job," she whispered, eyes bright. He watched her go, disappearing into the rain. He turned back to the lobby, the quiet aftermath settling in. Security officers took notes. Guests found alternate routes. The building resumed its hum. He felt the weight of what had nearly happened, stuck between metal doors, trapped among alarms, waiting for rescue that might have come too late. He thought of warning sign after warning sign. The loose bolt the technician missed, the hot brakes no one reported, the elevator's faint tremor that only a seasoned observer could detect. He summoned his head of building maintenance into his office. He demanded answers. How had these vulnerabilities gone unnoticed? How many others failed to see what she saw? They sifted through reports together, line by line. They discovered a pattern of cost-cutting, skipped inspections, deferred repairs. He felt a sting of guilt. He had demanded profit margins above safety margins. He had trusted numbers more than people. He called an emergency meeting of his board. No corporate jargon, no reassurances disguised as platitudes. He laid out the facts. A crisis averted by chance by someone paid pennies an hour. He proposed sweeping changes, mandatory audits, anonymous hazard reports, a fund to reward employees who flagged potential dangers. Most directors bristled at the added expense. One quit on the spot. Several threatened to pull investments. He held firm. He reminded them of what truly mattered: people, not profits. If you cannot protect your assets, you cannot claim success. The next morning he met her again. He had tracked down her apartment. It was modest, peeling paint, a single lamp, a small photograph of her family pinned above a chipped dresser. She opened the door in slippers, dust smudged on her apron. Her eyes widened when she saw him. He apologized for barging in. She laughed softly. Nothing he could do would embarrass her now. He offered her a job. Not as a maid, he had cleaners. He offered her a position on his safety oversight team. She blinked. She had never had an office, a title, a salary with benefits. "I just did what I could," she said. "No," he insisted. "You did more than you know. You saved lives and saved me from a mistake that could have cost everything." He handed her a formal letter. The position's pay would change her life. She hesitated, thinking of her son in college, her mother's medicine, her own dreams that had slipped away under late-night shifts. She accepted. In the months that followed, she traveled with him to other properties, inspecting stairwells and elevators, training staff to watch the small signs. They forged an unlikely friendship built on respect. He came to realize that success was measured not by stock prices, but by safety logs, by the well-being of people whose names never made headlines. One afternoon, as they walked through a brand-new conference center he had commissioned, she tugged at his sleeve. "Look here." A hairline crack in the concrete pillar. It could widen under stress. He knelt and traced the fault with his finger. Engineers were called. Repairs scheduled. Disaster averted before it began. He looked at her, gratitude in his eyes. She shook her head, humility shining brighter than any chandelier. She went back to work, cleaning the offices alongside his new teams, ensuring that every corner was safe, every pipe secure. He often thought back to that rainy day in the lobby, when a simple warning changed everything. Had she been silent, he might have been trapped. Had he ignored her, the fire could have spread. Fate had aligned in that moment because she spoke up, and he listened. In time, he wrote a letter to every company leader he knew, urging them to value the voices of those who saw the world differently. He told them of the maid who warned him and of the business meeting that almost never happened. He challenged them to build cultures where every warning was heard, every concern addressed, every person respected. Years later, at a global conference on workplace safety, he stood at the podium. The audience was massive, corporate titans in tailored suits. He described the story of a poor maid who changed his life. He asked for a show of hands from anyone who had ever missed a warning sign. Hands shot up across the hall. He closed by reminding them that no title, no fortune, no power could replace the simple act of listening. He thanked a woman whose name he publicly revealed at last and invited her on stage. She walked out in a crisp suit and a shy smile. The applause washed over them both. They stood together, embodying a new definition of leadership, one rooted in empathy, humility, and the courage to speak the truth. And in that moment, the world knew that true wealth was not measured by bank accounts but by the safety, dignity, and respect of every human being.